When you're looking to write off your death ray and your expenses, you hire the part-time henchman. I am Jeremy.
And I'm Jesse.
Apologize that Casey and Joanna aren't here. They had personal items to take care of. But the rest of us are here and we're able to carry forward. How's it going, Jesse?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. Try to pass time with some good old television. End up watching a movie over the weekend.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah,
Anything good?
I want my money back.
Oh, okay. Are you going to tell people what you watched?
I watched the Dragon Ball Super movie.
Okay. All right.
It did nothing new I haven't seen before in anime movies or even a Dragon Ball movie.
Mm-hmm.
Well, no, it did some new things, which was interesting. But with the last 30 minutes of being a nonstop battle, it kind of got tiring after a while.
I'm not a fan of it, and I don't have a problem with people that are. I do have a problem with clickbaity articles, and there was a few that surfaced around that film over the weekend.
Like what?
I saw a bunch of people reposting articles from a couple different sources that said that the Broly movie took number one at the box office this past weekend.
Oh, I saw that.
Yeah, that's utterly untrue. It was number one on the Wednesday and Thursday of the weekend, but the
hmm
totality of the weekend was taken by Glass by like $30 million. That was the margin really between the two.
Well, I can report that every showing up to one I saw was sold out in where I live.
Well, yeah, I mean, of course it's going to be sold out because the screenings are incredibly limited. It may have made the most per screen, but that's only because it didn't open to a whole lot of screens. But yeah, it did not do number one. It's funny that you mentioned movies because just last night I got home from my day job, trying to
hmm
relax a little bit. There's no Monday Night Football, so already there's a little bit of ennui, like breaking into my night.
hmm
So I'm flipping channels and I come across AMC, and I nearly laughed out loud because on AMC it's only half an hour into like the 1984 Kevin Bacon film Footloose. So I'm like, oh, here's my childhood in one film. Okay, awesome. So
Oh no, I could probably do one better for you.
wait, wait,
Okay.
because I let it play in the background while I'm doing stuff. I'm laughing the whole time at people trying to take themselves seriously in this movie. And I remember thinking to myself, boy, I don't know how it could get any more 80s cheese than that. And as soon as the credits start to play, the next movie comes on. It's Roadhouse with Patrick Swayze. So I'm already laughing. It's just like, oh, okay, I've hit 80s bingo here. This is awesome. This is great. Sat through the whole film. Brad Wesley and his redneck version of supervillainy and all that stuff. Patrick Swayze and that incredible luscious mullet he wore throughout the film. So as soon as I'm done laughing at that, I just thought, wow, okay, my sides can't take anymore and it's getting late. The next movie comes on and I hear familiar music. I'm like, no, they didn't. It's The Breakfast Club. Oh, God! I hit like bad movie orgasms there. I was just having such a great night.
So, 3 months ago, was perusing Netflix trying to find something that interests me in watching.
Mm-hmm.
Came across Rumble in the Bronx.
You know what? It's a good Chinese movie. It's not a good English movie.
No, it's not. But because I watched it and just went all over it. And then 2 months ago, I was perusing through it and found Enter the Dragon.
Yeah, yeah. I
I remember renting that movie.
yeah. Remember when Bruce Lee movies used to be art? I found one on Rift Tracks recently.
Oh no, not the Bruce Lee one.
Enter the Dragon. That's a Bruce Lee film.
Oh no, it was one of those black exploitation films.
Oh, do you mean Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon?
I guess I don't remember the title. I
The
saw
one with
the
Tiamat?
image on it. It's like, oh my god.
Yeah, the one with Tiamat and Vanity and Sho'nuff. You know what? I watched that recently only because I had myself a double feature. When I found out that was on Netflix, I immediately put that in a playlist. So I watched that, and then right afterwards, I watched Black Dynamite. I was a happy camper for a good 4 hours.
Oh yeah, I remember renting that movie back when video rentals was a thing.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, there was a time where you could take that seriously. It took me a while to understand that The Last Dragon was really a joke in and of itself. It was entirely a joke. But oddly enough, one subject goes into the next because do you remember that the star of Barry Gordy's The Last Dragon, Tiamat, That black guy who obviously didn't know any sort of kung fu or martial arts in that film.
I will be honest, I was too young to know any names. I just like, ooh,
No,
it's like martial arts film.
the reason why I say it all comes back around is because Tiamat starred in a stage reproduction of Roadhouse in the Patrick Swayze role. The pictures of him with that mullet on his head. Oh dear
Oh
God!
God, he
Oh, the wig.
was it blonde.
Oh God, yes, of course it was. It's not like any of this makes any sense to begin with. Why not just go full Monty on it? I mean, jeez. So, before we get any further lost in 80s movies hell, the subject of this week is Volume 1 of Deadly Class, the original comic book that has now spawned a new TV series on Sci-Fi that started just last week.
Oh, really?
Yes. We will get to that after the news of the week, and we'll start off with Marvel comic news. We're going to talk about the characters and properties owned by the House of Mouse and what their plans are for the stories in the upcoming months. Marvel Unlimited, Disney streaming service of Marvel Comics, has unveiled the most popular Marvel comics of 2018. In other words, what were people downloading the most when it came to their reading? And the answer both was and was not a surprise. Because if you...
All right.
Well, what do you think would be the most popular Marvel storyline to be downloaded in the last year?
Last year?
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to remember what happened last year.
I'll give you a hint, and it'll give the whole thing away. Think about the movies.
Civil War?
The
No.
Infinity Gauntlet.
Oh.
Published in 1991, the storyline that basically the Marvel Cinematic Universe used in the last few years to set up the Infinity War movies. The Infinity Gauntlet was the #1 most downloaded storyline on Marvel Unlimited. What did interest me, though, was that the next on the list was the first volume of Uncanny X-Men, the original 1963 to 2001 run. Or 2011. Really? Yes. Apparently the X-Men are much more popular when it comes to dedicated comic readers than I thought they were. I thought after New Avengers they just kind of fell wayside because they didn't, and believe me, X-Men fan, Jesse will tell you, I can go on for hours about that crew.
Yes.
But, after the New Avengers, they just haven't had very galvanizing storylines for the most part. The Avengers have. But apparently a lot of fans have gone back to read the original X-Men stuff. And next to that was Ultimate Spider-Man Volume 1, the ultimate reboot of Peter Parker from the early 2000s. Then after that was the second volume of Amazing Spider-Man, the 1993 to 2013 run. It's an interesting kind of back and forth when it comes to popular reading on the Marvel app. I found that curious, man. When I saw that list, I'm just like, really? The X-Men? I missed a meeting. What?
I'm saying, I have issues. Me personally, I have issues rewatching or reading anything from back in the day when I was still a kid because I can look back and say, "Oh my God, this looks terrible," only because of video quality or just quality in general.
Yeah, but these are fresh digital copies. They probably look great.
Well, it's like I can bring I can bring up examples, but I don't feel like boring the audience with it. But
okay, we can talk about Transformers the movie later.
My example would have been Thundercats, to be honest. But
fair enough.
Or He-Man.
True, very true. Marvel has also added some new details as to the War of the Realms, the big event that's going to take over a large part of the summer where the 10 realms of Asgard are at war with each other. Well, actually, the 9 of them have been taken over by Malekith the Accused, the Dark Elf. Mm-hmm. And the only one left standing is Midgard, our plane of existence, which obviously means that, Marvel superheroes at large are going to be involved in this.
Oh, fun.
Except, it's even drawing in certain segments of Marvel comics that I didn't think would get involved in such a thing.
Like?
There's going to be a 3-issue miniseries by Matthew Rosenberg and Pere Perez called War of the Realms Uncanny X-Men. And the War of the Realms is coming to Westchester, except it's not even like the primary group of X-Men you'd expect to respond to this. It's actually a small group of X-Men who are very well versed in what happens in Asgard. Danny Moonstar, Ilyana Rasputin, Sean McCoy, and Rainey Sinclair.
I know maybe 2 of them.
Okay, the four of them are original New Mutants. Moonstar, who used to be a mutant and now has Valkyrie powers. Illyana Rasputin, Magic, the
Yeah.
mysterious sorceress who was taken over by Loki for a short... No, she was ensorcelled by the Enchantress for a short amount of time. Zanmin Koi, Karma, who, when the New Mutants were kidnapped to Asgard, was incredibly fat. She ended up living in a desert for 5 years and managed to lose all that weight. The Shadow King did it to her. And Rainey Sinclair, Wolfsbane, who fell in love with a wolf prince in Asgard.
I'm surprised I didn't recognize that last one.
It can be a little embarrassing when you're reminded that they have depth. But, as surprising as that one was, the other miniseries actually hit me even further in the face because I questioned how and why. It's going to be written by Jerry Dugan, the arts by Marcelo Ferreira. War of the Realms, Punisher, a 3-issue miniseries.
I think he might be right at home.
Well, the solicit for it says, quote, "The War of the Realms has brought the monsters to the streets of New York City, but New York has a monster all its own. Frank Castle. And he'll be damned to hell if he's going to let a bunch of Ten Realms tin pot tyrants terrorize his town. But, given he's one man against an army of monsters, hell might soon have him. The War of the Realms is about to be Marvel's one-man army. Expect punishment," unquote.
That was some good alliteration early in that description.
Are you kidding? As soon as I never read that before. As soon as I sounded that out, I'm just like, hey, I didn't trip. But, the Punisher on the front lines, oof, I don't know who's worse off in that case.
All right, depends on what the Punisher could get his hands on, I guess.
Yeah, I suppose. Although, an enchanted hammer is not going to do him much good.
Oh no, he could probably just take one of the monster weapons or make something out of one of the monsters.
Well, there is a bevy of Star Wars comic news. Star Wars is one of the licenses currently under Marvel Comics because, of course, they all fall under the Disney umbrella. The mouse owns a lot these days.
Oh yeah.
First off is the news that one of the central writers of the Star Wars series, Kieran Gillen, is leaving the series as of the upcoming issue number 67. He's been part of the Star Wars Marvel line since the publisher took it back over from Dark Horse in 2015. He's also responsible for co-creation of a fan-favorite character from those comics, Dr. Aphra. He worked a long time with Salvador Larroca, and Gillen just announced that he's leaving the series. That may have to do with a number of creator-owned properties he's working on in Image right now. He said in the World Mail, quote, "I have 3 issues left to write in The Scourging of Shu-Torun. That's issue 67, the end of my story, and I'll be off. No present plans to write anything else in Star Wars. I suspect I've said all I've wanted to about these characters in comics. At least in this period, anyway," unquote.
So maybe he just ran out of ideas.
Well, sometimes it's good for an artist to step away from something.
Yeah, it is.
I mean, if you keep doing it forever, you'll end up running over your own stuff sooner or later. But like I said, Gillen's been pretty busy lately. He's got a number of Image series that he's writing, including, I believe he's also responsible for the current run of one of my favorite ongoing series right now, Die.
Die.
I know I've mentioned this before. It's about 6 teenagers who ended up getting transported to an alternative world during a fantasy role-playing session. 5 of them came back.
Huh.
Yeah, it's more complicated than that. I could spend a long time talking about it, but so far the first 2 issues have been both interesting and terrifying. Marvel also is pushing a new mini anthology called The Age of Rebellion. It's going to focus on original trilogy icons. This is going to be written by Greg Pak. It's going to be illustrated by Chris Spouse. It's going to have... Chris Spouse is doing the hero tales. The villain tales will be illustrated by Mark Lamming. He previously worked with Greg Pak on Dynamite Entertainment's James Bond series. It's interesting. So it's basically going to pick up some unknown stories from the original trilogy era of the Star Wars movies.
Interesting.
Yeah. Marvel's also going to be publishing a special April edition with short stories focusing on other heroes and villains of the original trilogy, written by Mark Guggenheim and John Abrams and Cy Spurrier. Man, Disney's really pushing Star Wars this year. I wonder if that has to do with, I don't know, the next movie that's supposed to come out later this year, or Galaxy's Edge. Right?
What? Wait, what movie's coming out this year?
Isn't Episode 9 coming out this year?
I don't know. I really stopped keeping in touch with that.
fairly certain that was supposed to be this year. Speaking of Galaxy's Edge, it was also announced that there's going to be a tie-in comic based on the Disneyland, I don't know, section of its theme parks coming up. Galaxy's Edge is going to open early this summer in Disneyland and late this summer in Disney World in Orlando, Florida. The section of the park is going to be on a fictional world called Batuu. This April, there will be a new 5-issue miniseries exploring this new section of Star Wars mythology. The official synopsis for the series is, quote, readers of the 5-issue miniseries will be the first to meet the infamous Doc Ondar, the Ithorian collector of rare antiquities, and find out what happens when the First Order reaches the edge of wild space. The key to saving this lawless outpost might just involve a job pulled long ago by none other than Han Solo and his cohort Chewbacca, unquote. Doc Ondar was actually referenced in the Solo film. Solo, a Star Wars story?
I haven't seen it.
I just watched it last week on Netflix.
Oh, how was it?
You know, it wasn't bad. I wouldn't say it's anything terribly special, but as far as Star Wars films go, it's pretty good. I think too many people, though, got hung up on the fact that Alden Ehrenreich is not Harrison Ford, and they just wouldn't let the differences go. You know, I mean, granted, it's a prequel story, and they hired a young actor to play it. You know, you got to give the guy some latitude to work in. But as far as an origin tale for Han Solo, it does explain a hell of a lot more about why the character was the way he was in the original films. One more piece of Star Wars-related Marvel comic news. Marvel is announcing a new miniseries called TIE Fighter. It's also coming out in April. The series is going to follow an elite squadron of TIE Fighter pilots known as Shadow Wing. Their job is to protect Imperial interests following the Empire's defeat at the end of Return of the Jedi. So it sounds like we're going to have our own Empire version of Rogue Squadron.
Sounds fascinating.
It does sound pretty interesting. The art's going to be by Roge Antonio, who did X-Men Red and Batgirl and the Birds of Prey. Let me see, who's writing this? It's going to be written by Jody Houser, who did other Star Wars comics for Marvel, including Thrawn and the comic book adaptation of Rogue One. You know, I could actually sit down and read this. I like the Rogue Squadron comic books more than I like the Central series that were put out. But at the same time, it didn't have an opposite number. You didn't really get too many tales about people working within the Empire at any period. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So that's an aspect I would like to see explored a bit. Getting out of Star Wars and back into Marvel properties, man. There was something that was announced this week that made me dread what is coming.
What's that?
Marvel announced a new X-Men miniseries with Rob Liefeld.
Oh.
Yeah,
Why?
The co-creator of Deadpool, the creator of X-Force. He's introducing something new to the Marvel canon called Major X.
Oh, I saw a headline for that one.
Yeah.
Didn't actually read it.
Yeah. According to what Liefeld told Entertainment Weekly, quote, to me, the X-Men have always thrived on big ideas, crazy ideas. So I figured, let's just go for it. Major X introduces a new character who is certain to mix up everything in the X world. He hails from another existence, which is called the Existence, a mutant Shangri-La, a safe haven that has been a realm where mutant kind has lived in peace and harmony. They escaped there following a tragedy that befell mutant kind and built this community. There are some familiar faces that he has forged this society with, but then a terrible event happens within the Existence that causes Major X to cross over and land in the Marvel universe that we know. But he doesn't land in the spot he was hoping. So in the first issue, he's in 1991. We progressively get him where he needs to go. By the conclusion of the story, we catch up to modern-day Marvel, unquote. I'm already not liking this. As an X-Men fan, I just... This concept reeks of cheese. And you know me, I like to be a generally positive person until something comes out, but Liefeld has not given me any reason for hope.
I was listening to the synopsis, like it's... I don't know. There's a hint of edginess to this, but...
It's a little bit Sliders, a little bit Doctor Who, is what I'm hearing here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, his artwork... He's updated his artwork some. His characters are not frighteningly skinny in his joints anymore. And there is some level of proportion, but it's still kind of jacked up. And,
how are his pockets?
Huh?
How's his pocket ratio?
None. which scares me even more. This guy doesn't have a pocket, which makes me wonder where he puts anything, including ammunition. As you can see, the character does have actual human proportioned feet and knees, which is good. He has a stomach, not just a rib cage that's being supported by skin. Except now the character comes off as very square, and it's Liefeld's typical designs, unfortunately. You know, they're oversimplified to make them easy to draw, and unfortunately it makes them kind of bland. You know, it kind of looks like what would happen if Cyclops went on a 90s rampage during his rebellion phase.
Oh, you think that too?
That's what first came to mind when I saw this. I'm like, oh god.
Yeah, I saw the helmet. It's like, is that Cyclops?
Thankfully, no. We already know it can't be. You know, I mean, I will flip through it. I will try to read it, but it's kind of hard to keep an open mind in this situation. Liefeld's burned me a few too many times. Another new series that Marvel has announced is a throwback series, and one that I am curious to read. They're calling it Symbiote Spider-Man. It's going to be written by Peter David, who did X-Factor, and Ben Reilly, the Scarlet Spider. Art's going to be by Greg Land. And it's going to explore the weeks when Spider-Man was wearing the black symbiote costume way back when.
Sounds interesting, especially with Peter David doing it.
Yeah, they're going to fill in some unknown stories, apparently, during that timeline. And you know what? You got my curiosity, because as far as Marvel canon, that timeline was only a few weeks, even though it was probably closer to a year in terms of the comics. So goodness knows what could have happened while he was discovering what that costume was capable of. You know, and of course the symbiote eventually was forcibly removed, found Eddie Brock, and became Venom. I like this concept, though. Marvel Comics editor Devin Lewis in a press release said, quote, "This is an in-continuity story of Peter Parker, aka the Amazing Spider-Man, set in the weeks he was wearing the alien symbiote costume that would later become one of his greatest foes, and all your favorites are there. Black Cat, Aunt May, the Bugle. This is classic Spider-Man in the mighty Marvel manner," unquote. It's an interesting idea.
It is.
It doesn't say that it's a miniseries, though, so I kind of wonder how long... Oh, it is a miniseries. It's a 5-issue mini.
Oh, okay.
And featured heavily on the cover is Mysterio in the background.
Oh, boy.
You don't suppose that's a coincidence with recent movies upcoming, do you? Hey, you know, I can guess. Maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was. We will find out. And Marvel is also announcing a super secret series, and they won't say what it is. Marvel is gathering some creators together to lend short stories for an anniversary issue, with the publisher teasing one creative team to work on a super secret upcoming series. It's going to be written by Eve Ewing, who's currently doing Ironheart. The art's going to be by Joey Vasquez, who did Spider-Geddon. And they just will not say what this series is about. I am so curious. If anything, just because I've read the work of the other two in other series, they're pretty good. I'd like to see what they can make together, but I'd still like to know what in the hell's going on here. The first collaboration between the two will come as part of the anthology of short stories in Miss Marvel number 38, the last issue that involves G. Willow Wilson, the creator of the series. Well, geez, I should have read the story. I should have read the next story. It turns out they did reveal what this new secret series is. In 2019, Marvel Team Up is returning.
Oh.
Yeah, Marvel Team Up used to be an anthology series that involved a couple of unlikely heroes who were teaming up for very short goals. Usually only lasted like 1 or 2 issue stories.
Yeah, I remember those.
Okay, in April, Marvel Team Up is returning, and they've announced the first story arc. It's Spider-Man, Peter Parker,
Of course.
teaming up with Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel.
Oh, wow, there's some promise right there.
There is. Ewing told Marvel.com, quote, "I mean, they're just two characters that I adore and think are so fun. I'm enjoying getting into their heads and working through their strengths, weaknesses, anxieties, and challenges. I love that they're both hometown heroes, people who are deeply rooted in where they're from. For this story, their age difference and cultural differences are going to matter a bit. Pete was definitely very similar to Kamala once upon a time, but now he's, a grown dude. His situation with Kamala is going to force him to put himself in the mind of a teen again in some unexpected ways, and Kamala is going to have to get into the head of an adult who has been in the game a lot longer than she has," unquote.
I really like where this one's going.
Yeah, that's promising on so many different levels. I I want to read this. I'm not much for team up books, but this sounds like fun. Although if she appears to him and the first thing she says is, "You remember that really old movie, Empire Strikes Back?" I'm going to throw it away.
Oh man. Yeah, when you said Timo, so it's like, say, all right, so who is this? You always says first, like, of course, Spider-Man. He's always doing a fucking team up. But I mean, who hasn't he teamed up with now?
It's actually a fair question. I can't really think of anybody he hasn't had some serious time with.
The only thing I can think of are like some big time villains. I think Magneto comes to mind right now.
Yeah, I suppose so. Next up is DC Comic News. We'll talk about the other major company in comics and what they've got happening now and in the near future. You can actually win a trip to DC Comics headquarters in Los Angeles right now for $10.
I think I saw an advertisement for that somewhere. Facebook, maybe?
Well, possibly. DC has launched an Omaze. If you're not familiar, Omaze is a website that offers raffle tickets for charities. A company offers up a prize. You buy in for $10 per virtual ticket. Eventually, there's a virtual drawing, and the winner gets the prize, and the money goes towards whichever charity the company has picked. In this case, DC has picked a campaign to benefit the Gay, Lesbian, and Straight Education Network and the goal of creating safe and inclusive schools for everyone. For every $10 towards the GLSEN campaign, you are automatically entered for you and a friend to visit the Fortress of Solitude, DC's incredible archive library. This is usually closed to the public, but if you win, you get to see the collection of over 100,000 comics as well as movie props, original artwork, and countless other artifacts in DC's Burbank office. The prize also includes accommodations and round-trip tickets to Los Angeles, California. So if you're interested, you can go to omaze.com, look up DC Comics, and enter there. You know what? At least they're putting up something nice for charity.
Yeah.
And talk about a rare viewing, man. That's not open to the public. You can see some stuff most nerds would probably cry to see.
Yeah.
Also, Brian Michael Bendis is introducing a new character into the DC universe via his Wonder imprint. And I'm a little curious to find out more about her because she apparently is a character with no special abilities of her own. Not even much as far as I can find by special talents. Her name is Naomi. That's going to be the name of the series. Bendis is working on it with David F. Walker and artist Jamal Campbell. And she's a character with apparent potential, but yeah, no special abilities. CBR.com asked how Naomi fits into Wonder Comics in the DC Universe, and Bendis said, quote, "Naomi is brand new. She's an original character. We bring with her an entire world of stuff to the DC Universe. So instead of reimagining something like Young Justice and reintroducing it, Naomi is coming to the line with an entire toy box of stuff." Unquote. So then CBR mentioned that trying to launch a new character is hard, and why did Bendis feel the need to make this its own series instead of part of Young Justice, right? Bendis' response, quote, "Really, it comes down to her perspective of the DC Universe. Her perception of her own story from her own point of view is literally the only way David and I wanted to tell the story. Like, there wasn't even another idea. The moment that you're seeing the first issue is the moment it became her story. And it can only be effective from her point of view, which is that she has questions that she needs answered. And listen, yeah, sometimes people try to launch books and they don't do so well. Every other week, movies come out and they bomb. It doesn't mean we don't try. The biggest successes of my life were launching Jessica Jones and Miles Morales into the world, and sometimes to great struggle. But it's hard to convince me that that fight wasn't worth it. When I came to DC Comics, not only did they ask me to create some new characters, they kind of emptied the lanes, like, just do it, man. They created a situation where I can share, so the first thing I did was call David Walker and said, this is an opportunity here to do something really honest and unique and beautiful. So I didn't feel like it was that big of a gamble because it was literally what everyone behind the scenes was hoping we would do, unquote. So apparently what I've gathered is that Naomi has a close encounter during one of Superman's legendary fights. And it causes her to ask some questions, and she starts trying to unravel mysteries within the DC Universe. You know what? It's not my kind of story, but I do think it's the kind of story DC needs. They don't have enough interactions with regular people in the DC Universe. It's kind of a closed circuit system when it comes to DC's heroes and their
Hmm.
entourages and families. They do need the perspective of more outside characters in that universe to make it feel like a real world. Not just a place where they happen to have these big fights. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, I understand what you're saying there.
So I'm willing to give it a shot. It's not my kind of thing, but goodness knows I found some interesting places in stories I don't usually like to read anyway. Unfortunately, DC has a little bit of bad news when it comes to some of their bigger heroes, and I mean that quite literally. DC has revealed that April's number 36 of the Titan series will be the final one of this run. Titans launched as part of the Rebirth era. It was the adult versions of Nightwing, Wally West, Flash, Donna Troy, Arsenal, Tempest, and Omen as they came together again to be a team. And apparently, people are just not reading this book enough.
Hmm.
I don't quite know what to say about it. It's just I've tried several times since the Rebirth era to pick up issues and find good places to jump in, and there have been points of good writing, but they've been mid-event, so it's not really a good place for me to get into the Titans story. Also feels kind of sad considering the Titans just revamped their lineup with Donna Troy as the leader, and Kyle Rayner just joined their ranks a couple months ago. So it feels like a missed opportunity, you know what I mean? Unfortunately, DC just kind of dropped the ball on that one.
Well, they had to change up the lineup anyway, since I think you said Wally West was part of it.
He was. He was removed like a number of months ago.
Ooh, yeah, of course he was, since dead in a barn house.
Right. It's kind of funny you mentioned that because the writer of Heroes in Crisis, Tom King, is giving away comic books for a cause.
Really?
Yeah, for people that don't know or don't care, we are in the middle of the longest partial government shutdown in the history of the United States here. And unfortunately, government workers are starting to miss paychecks as a result, right?
Yeah.
King posted a stack of over 100 DC graphic novels that were sent to him as comps, basically for working for DC. They sent him copies of graphic novels so he could get caught up on certain characters and or just, thank yous for his work, right?
Yeah.
He was donating comic books. He was going to go to a signing at Third Eye Comics in Annapolis, Maryland on January 19th, starting at 11 a.m. till 6 p.m. And he was basically taking all these comic books and he was giving them away, or he was selling them so that he could, get some money for these people who are out of work. He also agreed to do the occasional sketch on blank covers of Heroes in Crisis, and if you know his drawing ability,
Yeah, I got one of those.
yeah, he actually posted an image of one of his examples, and he posted a blank cover of Heroes in Crisis #1 that has a stick figure Batman falling down what looks like some kind of ravine, and he actually wrote on the inside of the ravine, "Large Rocky Mountain." But King was also signing comics all day, and that was kind of him. That's a lot of work to go through. So I give him credit for doing what he can to try and alleviate things. King is also teasing that DC Comics' Shining Knight may be returning in the near future.
Shining Knight?
Yeah, King posted a single image of the character recently on Twitter. It was art by Clayman and Tomo More, and it shows a character who's back to the reader holding what appears to be a familiar enchanted longsword and facing off with a dragon. And the caption, all it says underneath is, quote, "coming up in Heroes in Crisis," unquote. The Shining Knight is a character known as Sir Justin. It's been a character in DC since 1941. The last time the Knight's known to appear was in the New 52 as Yistin, one of the first openly transgender characters to be featured in comics. In 2012's Demon Knights, written by Paul Cornell, it was revealed that Yistin has both genders in that series universe. Is that technically transsexual, or is that just hermaphroditic, or... No, androgynous, that's a word I was looking for. I don't know if that's technically transsexual.
I can't help you with that.
Okay. No, I mean,
I'm
I
not
was...
well informed enough for this.
Yeah, I'm delving into an interesting area. I'm just asking the questions. I'm not looking to put a label on it. I would just like to know if X in some way equals Y. But it does appear that the character is coming, if anything, from the writer of the series, to Heroes in Crisis. Tom King also had to respond to recent controversy over a recent writing in one of those gigantic Walmart edition superheroes or super comics, the giant size editions, if you recall.
Uh-huh.
In the Superman 100-page giant, he had a 12-issue story in issue number 7 that led to parents objecting to his work on Twitter because it showed several potential ways Lois Lane could be murdered. I
Like
know.
what?
It showed several ways Lois Lane could potentially be murdered. People were up in arms because it showed several, not quite graphic, but highly implied ways Lois Lane could be murdered, all from the perspective of Superman. And, there were people who were saying, quote, "I've been buying the Walmart Superman books and sharing them with my 10-year-old son each month. It's been fun until now. I won't share number 7 with him because a 12-page Lois Lane snuff comic isn't something I want him to experience," unquote. And, it's one of those cases where I think context is very important. See, the story is written by King, the artist is Andy Kubert, and here's the story. Superman is away from Earth, right? You following me here?
Yeah.
Okay. He's away from Earth, and he realizes he's missed a couple urgent calls from Lois Lane, and his mind starts racing to all the potential things that could have happened to her in his absence.
Oh, I get that.
Yes, so basically it's Superman facing anxiety. And yet,
Wow.
yeah, which is not something we're used to reading about in DC Comics. I think we can both agree.
Yes. Well, not. It isn't visually represented, anyways.
Yes, but it is represented visually here. And I do think people need to sit down and read it because it's one of those rare moments where Superman is humanized because he is afraid for what would happen to his wife if he's not there to respond.
Oh, all you say is last time I heard something like this where Walmart customers were complaining about a comic book that the comic book stopped.
Well, we'll see. I don't know if they have the power to stop DC at this point.
Well, they could say no to the comic and let's not carry it, period.
Yeah.
And that's what ended up killing the comic I used to read back in the 90s.
As King put it himself on a statement to CBR, quote, "On a mission far from home, Superman tries calling home. Lois doesn't answer. As people do when they can't get in touch with their loved ones, he starts imagining worst-case scenarios. Why won't she answer? Images of her demise crowd his thoughts, driving him crazy. In the end, the line connects and Superman and Lois discuss how they're worried about each other. They both lead dangerous lives, however, neither of them asks the other to compromise that life. Lois has her career, Superman has his. Despite the worry and risk, they trust each other. They depend on each other. Regardless of the heart of it all, they both go forward and they both continue to save the world. To me, this is a metaphor for the best parts of love. Love comes with stress, agony, risk, vulnerability, and we shouldn't deny that stress, agony, risk, and vulnerability. However, love also comes with the unique joy of putting your faith in someone else, of knowing that someone else puts their faith in you. This story is not about the deaths of Lois Lane or the anxieties of Superman. It's about the love of Lois Lane and the love of Superman, the enduring strength of these amazing, iconic characters," unquote. See, it's another case of people freaking out over a few images without actually sitting down to read what's going on.
Well, a lot of people live by TLDR.
Well,
So
I wouldn't even say that. It's just it's another case where, unfortunately, DC's history, I think, is clouding people's judgment because this is the company that made women in refrigerators famous. You know what I mean?
or
And-
paralyzed.
Right. And to back up for a second, for people who may not be aware, and if you're listening to this, I don't know how you couldn't be. DC and Marvel, in certain respects, have had histories of using female characters as more or less story items in the ongoing tales of their heroes, generally the male ones anyway.
Plot
But
MacGuffin.
yeah, but DC unfortunately took it a step further when, to add pathos to the story of Kyle Rayner, like the fourth Earth in Green Lantern, they decided to have his current girlfriend murdered by one of his rivals, who then folded her up in inhuman ways and shoved her in a refrigerator.
Mm-hmm.
And then left a fake note from the girlfriend to Kyle Rayner, basically saying, left something special in the fridge for you.
Yep, and that's where the term "getting fridge" comes from.
Yeah. So I understand people's their own anxieties, but yeah, unless you've read the story, I don't think you have any right to really criticize him until you've really read the story. Last up, when it comes to DC comic news, there is a potential spoiler and teaser when it comes to cover number 8 of the Heroes in Crisis series, also written by Tom King. And it's creating a little bit of confusion online because it features a character, actually a number of characters who should be dead. Not even going to place a guess on that one, huh?
No, I'm.
Okay. Well, I sent you the image in Skype. It is an image overlooking the sanctuary where the infamous murder took place. In the field, you can see 3 bloody, tattered robes and masks from Sanctuary, which are used for people's anonymity, so even the people inside aren't supposed to know who's there. But sitting in front of it, with their backs to the reader, is Wally West and his family from the pre-New 52 continuity of DC. His 2 kids, Jay and Iris, and his wife. And I'm sorry, I forget her name.
Who, his wife?
Yeah, I forget his wife's name.
Iris.
His wife's name was Iris?
Yes.
That's creepy.
No, wait. No, sorry. Iris was.
Iris was his daughter, I was pretty sure.
No, Iris was Barry's wife.
Yeah.
So I have no idea then.
Okay. But it is a curious thing, though, because supposedly by this point he's long dead, and his kids should not exist, period, right?
Yeah, well, here's the thing about super speedsters. They kind of break the rules of everything.
Well, we'll have to see what happens, because the solicit itself may hold a clue. And I think as a result of the solicit, somebody owes you a cookie.
Oh, am I right?
Quote, "You've seen all the clues. You've heard the testimony and eavesdropped on the secret confessions of the world's greatest superheroes. Now, with the killer revealed, it's time to find out why. What could have driven a hero to the brink to turn a savior into a murderer? Rifts will form between old allies, and the trinity of Wonder Woman, Superman, and Batman will have their leadership challenged and will question their own judgment. Sanctuary has become something they never imagined, and it's still potentially carrying on without them." Unquote.
Oh, shit.
So that does sound like somebody used Sanctuary itself as the murder weapon. And it sounds like it's a hero who did it all. I seriously doubt. Well, I mean, if it's a hero that did it all, that takes Harley Quinn like right off the list. And I seriously doubt it's Booster Gold. This is just too complicated for him. He's more of a straightforward sledgehammer, not a fine thinker. But what if it was Wally in a fit of despair over losing his family? He just decided nobody should be happy.
I would hate it if they did that.
Dude, I would be in on that, because that would be an amazing turn for that kind of character. I mean, maybe it's just the wrestling fan in me, but that would be just a hell of a story flip. Although Casey might kill himself over this.
Oh, I'm pretty sure a lot of fans would kill themselves or kill Tom King.
I think if he did this, that would be like unparalleled genius. That would be almost as scary as like when the Vision nearly murdered, was it Victor Mancha in the end of his miniseries?
If that is true, I have a feeling he's going to upset a lot of people.
Yeah, I think he's already done that. We'll see. I'm still sold on this series, though. It's been a lot of fun and really interesting so far. And last up is our general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. There is a little bit of news out of WonderCon as to its third wave of guests. We've already talked about 2 in depth, and it already sounds like a hell of a weekend, wouldn't you say?
Sure.
This is happening March 29th through 31st in Anaheim, California, right across the street from where California Adventure is. And Wave 3 is also pretty impressive as far as their guest list. First up is the author of the 3 Dark Crown series and the Goddess War trilogy, Kendare Blake. The writer of Deadpool and Guardians of the Galaxy and Star Wars, Jerry Dugan's going to be there. The writer, producer, and historian of Kirby, King of Comics, Mark Evanier. The writer of Planet Hulk, Firefly, and Star Wars, Age of Rebellion, Greg Pak is going to be at WonderCon. Yeah, I'd love to get his signature just for the Planet Hulk work alone. The artist on Batman, The Long Halloween, and Spider-Man Blue, Tim Sale, will be there. And the artist on Justice League Origins, Suicide Squad, and DC Comics co-publisher Jim Lee is going to be at WonderCon. Man, DC loves to send some big name talent to this convention. Marvel so far has not. No, seriously, Marvel so far has not seen fit to send anybody to WonderCon. They don't have a booth. They never really send anybody for signatures. If there's Marvel workers there, they're either there on their own dime or they're there as a result of other companies. I do think they're missing out a little bit by not attending this convention. I find it fun. It's a great mix of both industry and cosplay and fan stuff. As a matter of fact, I got a notification from Comic-Con Revolution. The lady who played Rita Repulsa in the Americanized version of Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, she's now a guest of honor for Saturday.
Really?
Yeah.
How old is she?
Oh God, I don't even know, dude. That feels like an unfair question somehow.
I mean, I really hope she doesn't listen. I'm pretty sure she doesn't listen. But it's like, when I first saw her in Power Rangers, I thought she was pretty old to begin with.
Oh, dude, come on. God, when that show came out, I was like 8. I was 18. I wasn't new at that point either. Oh, I hear what you're saying. I do. Somehow it feels like you're trying to kick somebody.
I don't mean it.
Well, Ontario Comic-Con Revolution is happening on Ontario, California, May 18th and 19th. And, God, I'm trying to look it up because the other major announcement was that, of course, Peter Cullen, the voice of Optimus Prime in multiple projects for Transformers, he's going to be there on Saturday only. And, dude, the fact that he's coming at all is still kind of amazing. Especially since he doesn't make that many public appearances these days.
He made a lot recently.
He's making a fair amount. There was that thing he's doing out in Vegas. I forget which convention, but he's going to be there with Frank Welker, who did Megatron in a number of projects, including the movies. And, gosh darn it. If only I had the money to get out there, but that's in like mid-March and not too long before WonderCon. I needed to be able to make those appearances as necessary. So I'm going to miss out on that. Also, remember we talked earlier about the Infinity Gauntlet being the most read series on Marvel's streaming service?
Yeah.
Well, not streaming service. Marvel's, online reading service.
Yeah.
It turns out the Infinity Gauntlet was the highest-selling graphic novel of all of 2018, according to Diamond Distributors.
Really?
Yeah. A lot of people need to sit down and read that, apparently. Diamond's top 10 list of best-selling graphic novels, Infinity Gauntlet was number 1, but it was followed up by Saga Volume 9 by Image, Saga Volume 1, Saga Volume 8, Action Comics 80 Years of Superman, The Walking Dead Volume 29, Lines We Cross, Paper Girls Volume 1 by Image Comics, Batman White Knight, Dark Knight's Metal, and Monstrous Volume 1. Reading that list, it sounds like Image Comics has like most of the best-selling graphic novels of last year.
I think it's because it's like fresh ideas and concepts instead of, treading on old stuff like Batman and Superman.
Well, it's also limited continuity. When you're into one series in Image, generally that's the one series you need to read to understand it all.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like Marvel and DC where to understand a lot of the current events, you really need to be up on about 6 to 8 different groups of characters.
And how many decades worth of history?
I don't have time for that. I'll fill in some blanks as I go. Thank you very much. Marvel was also the top publisher of 2018. They had the largest amount of sales. However, they didn't have the best-selling comic of all of last year. That belongs to DC. Marvel's overall overall unit share, I should say, of 2018 was over 40%. So for every 5 comic books sold in a comic book stand, 2 of those were Marvel. DC came in second at just under 34%. But the best-selling comic book of all of last year, Action Comics number 1000.
Okay, I was afraid it was going to be Dark Knight's Metal, but...
No, and when you consider that's an $8 comic, that's a hell of an investment for a lot of people to buy.
Yeah.
The number 2 was Amazing Spider-Man number 800, which also wasn't cheap at a $10 comic.
Okay, I'm satisfied with the general populace now.
Although I'm sure number 3 pissed off a lot of people because it pissed me off.
Which one?
A $5 comic, Batman number 50.
Really, the wedding one?
The wedding issue, or the non-wedding issue as it is. Behind that was Fantastic Four number 1, Amazing Spider-Man number 1, Return of Wolverine number 1, Venom number 1, Amazing Spider-Man 798, Batman Who Laughs number 1 was a big seller.
Hmm.
And number 10 was Amazing Spider-Man 799. Basically, what I gather from that list is people like number ones and anniversary issues a whole lot.
I think they're buying them as collector purposes.
Well, duh, but still, it made him shell out money for it.
Yeah, I guess.
A little bit of sad news when it comes to the comic book world is that a comic book legend, a living legend, announced he's retiring in this year.
Who was it? I saw headlines for this.
George Perez, the man who helped create the Teen Titans, has announced
Yeah.
that after his appearances this year, he is retiring from active service when it comes to comic books. He put out a statement online, he put out a press release, and it says, quote, "In recent months, there's been a great deal of speculation as to the future of my career, my health, my ability to draw, and my future my future convention appearances. As a result, I would like to clear up everything firsthand so that hopefully any rumors, speculation, and misinformation can be laid to rest. With respect to future published work in comics and such, while I know it's been no secret that I've been dealing with a myriad of health issues, diabetes, heart ailments, vision issues, etc., they have indeed forced me to, for all intents and purposes, formally retire from the business of creating new comic stories." Unquote. Apparently,
Damn.
the diabetes and just, age catching up with him is too much of a strain on his eyes to produce fully rendered ink and pencil tone pieces on a quality level that justifies the price he's being paid for him, as he puts it. So he's still doing a few privately commissioned drawings that are in process. He's still doing a few head sketches at his convention appearances for this year, but after this year, apparently, it sounds like he's done with conventions as well. I looked it up. I don't have the list in front of me, but his last scheduled appearance in 2019 is Dragon Con this coming Labor Day in Atlanta, Georgia. It's kind of sad because he was one of the few artists I'm not an active fan of, but I was hoping to run into him on his convention circuit and just get a sketch in my book.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the list I saw, it doesn't look like he'll be traveling any further west than I want to say Missouri. He's staying close to home wherever that is.
Yeah.
Not much I can do about that. And I thought about maybe sending the book to him for a sketch, but it's like if he's just doing head sketches at conventions, I don't even know how to get in touch with anybody, really.
Mm.
It's a missed opportunity for me, and I don't want to say I feel sorry for him because he's aging, and he's willfully retiring. It's not like he's being kicked out.
Check it out on his own terms.
Pretty much, yeah. At least he has that chance.
Yeah.
The subject of this week is Deadly Class, Volume 1. This is a creator-owned series that was put out, I believe, under... Was it Dark Horse?
I don't know.
Oh my gosh, I'm asking the wrong question. Well, the reason why I brought this... Oh, it's an Image comic, okay. The reason why I brought this series up is because as of this past Wednesday, the first episode officially debuted of the live-action adaptation on Sci-Fi. And when I watched the first episode, I found myself kind of wrapped up in the story, and I wanted to find out more about the place where this came from. This was created and written by Rick Remender, and Wes Craig did the art. He's also listed as a co-creator. Colors are by Lee Lowridge. Letters are by Russ Wooten. And the editor is Sebastian Gerner. And this is a period piece set in 1987. So this would have been the same approximate time that The Watchmen took place over in their bizarre version of the comic book universe.
Might explain a lot of things, actually.
But the whole thing deals with the same kind of Cold War paranoia and just... I don't know. I wouldn't say the 80s were a down time for America, but it was definitely a time of protectionism and nationalism.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the whole thing centers around a young Nicaraguan boy who unfortunately was orphaned due to political policies at the time that released a lot of mental patients, and one of them just happened to do a swan dive off a bridge onto his parents. Sad moment.
Sad, but, another dark thing for a comic book character.
But it wasn't like he was an illegal immigrant. His dad was a cop. They came in legally. He just, unfortunately, was left alone by circumstance.
Sucks.
Yeah. And, I don't know. I had a lot of mixed feelings when I read this first volume. And considering how much I liked the live-action episode I saw, I was really surprised about how... I know I read the volume, I just didn't feel like I was fully pulled in and invested in it.
I've had a lot of issues trying to read it. Mostly, kind of the dry staleness of the first issue, I guess
Hmm.
I'll call it. But then this main character we're following is full of himself.
Yeah, I can agree that that the volume itself feels kind of dry. And the tempo is uneven. There's times where things are moving really fast, and then times where they slow way down. And it seems like a lot of the characters are in some serious mental grips. At the same time, the art was far from anything that I would call my favorite. There's times where it
No.
seems very 80s inspired, and I understand that's part of it, but there's also a lot of times where the art can feel a little flat. You know, like the action doesn't always make sense as far as a sense of motion, and sometimes characters can seem a little strangely plain. I don't know how you felt about it.
Uh, I don't really.
What?
I don't know. It's really hard for me. Well, this is kind of revealing me. I have a hard time, appreciating a lot of art unless it really stands out because I'm too busy reading, and I really have issues trying to negotiate both at the same time.
Okay. All right. The first issue itself, yeah, a lot of the first pages deal with the central character. His name is Nicholas, and he had some extreme
Marcus.
Marcus. Sorry, it's been a little bit since I read it, but he had some serious issues because, of course, when his parents were killed, he was put in a boys' home, and because of circumstances beyond his control, he became forcibly homeless, living on the streets, trying his best to find what little bright spots of happiness he could, and really not finding a damn one. You know, all the way down to his shoes being stolen while he was asleep. You know, God. I mean, it was dark in those first pages.
Yeah.
And then the section where he's running away from a sting while a bunch of other teenagers are assisting him for unknown reasons. That was one of those times where the tempo picked up so fast. I almost had to read those panels a couple times to make sure I was in the right places. You know, the
hmm
dialogue disappeared, the exposition disappeared, and all of a sudden it was like single word bubbles for quite a while there. The first full appearance of Saya, though, on her bike, it was like a Nagel painting.
What?
Nagel, he was an artist that was really big in the 80s. He drew like women with like white skin, dark hair, a whole lot of 80s retro wave stuff behind them. You'd have to look it up. I guess I was the only one paying attention to that art.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I said, it was fitting for the time period, but it still didn't feel like a fully fleshed out comic book, unfortunately. At least not at this point. After the young man is rescued, he has a bag put over his head, and he finds himself in the middle of a room of other teenagers, all talking about the psychopath they heard about and whether or not this kid is at all impressive. And then when the man behind it all shows up, that was a little odd. He's basically a diminutive Chinese man
hmm
in a white pinstripe suit, a long Fu Manchu mustache that's curled up for some reason. And where was his name? I was trying to find it.
Master Lin,
Master Lin.
Lin.
Thank you. The funny thing was, when I was first exposed to Master Lin, it was in the live action series, and he's being played by Benedict Wong, who played Wong in the Doctor Strange films.
Yeah, he's completely opposite what's being depicted here.
Yeah, this is a diminutive, skinny, emaciated little man who reminds me more of like James Hong, the guy who
Yeah.
played Lo Pan in Big Trouble in Little China, and he was in a bunch of other films. So when I was that was the odd part about reading it at this point, because as I'm reading the dialogue, I'm hearing Benedict Wong, but at the same time I can hear James Hong in the back of my mind, and those two voices are so different. It was screeching in my head. It wasn't helping. And eventually, Marcus accepts the invitation to be part of an assassin school. That's what all this is leading to. Marcus is part of a bunch of high school age kids who've all been picked up by this private academy, the King's Dominion. And their purview is basically to train assassins to help change the world for the positive, kill the people who deserve it. Which all sounds kind of Punisher-esque to me. It doesn't help that the school itself reminds me a lot of like Arkham Asylum from the Rocksteady video games.
Well, yeah, considering the landscape.
Well, yeah, it's built into a cave, for crying out loud. It's all very strange.
Very.
The flashbacks to Marcus's history don't help. I don't know. The second issue, it picked up some when you get a sense of what his life is going to be between the I don't even know what to call them, sociopathic at best instructors, the Lord of the Flies kind of social structure of the school.
Oh, I'll be honest. That second issue overwhelmed me with characters. I could not keep anything straight.
There's a lot to keep track of, as well as Marcus, purposefully going out of his way to find the other outcasts. And he ends up aligning himself with pretty much the other misfits. Well, not aligning himself, he just hangs out with the misfits. But there is quite a bit going on here, and to tell the truth, if I hadn't seen the first episode of the series, I'm not sure I would have gotten through this. The fact that the school is broken down into cliques and gangs.
No, that's an 80s trope still.
It's not just an 80s trope. That's high school in general.
Yeah, I suppose.
That's what high school is. The only difference is that the preps are actually kids who are, pretty much from FBI and CIA families. The Dixie mob is a literal Dixie mob. The Hispanic kids in school all pretty much come from different gangs, and they've all formed together to survive. The Final World Order, that was kind of an interesting name. The name of the group of black kids in school.
Yeah, from L.A.
Yeah. The Kuroki Syndicate. I don't know. I know they were going for Yakuza, but somehow that name almost felt like a joke in and of itself. Then again, it was probably made up by a teenager who didn't know any better anyway.
Well, to be honest, Japanese do like to create puns within their own language, so...
Very true. That's very true. And then their mission they're given by the end of the issue to pair up, kill somebody who deserves it, get evidence, and destroy... get proof, and destroy the evidence in the body. Talk about a hell of a first day in school. At the beginning of issue 3 is when I don't even know... You can't call everybody in this heroes and villains. I'll just say an antagonist shows up. He's creepy as hell.
Well, that was the end of the second, very end.
That was the... Oh, yeah, you're right. Yeah, he wants Marcus for reasons that aren't known quite yet, and he has a penchant for animal sex. Sex with animals. Wow. I mean, this series goes into some very frackin' dark places.
It's edgy as hell.
Yeah. The following issue, where Marcus and Willie are paired up to try and kill somebody from Marcus's past.
Mm-hmm.
That almost seemed like a bunch of bonding moments.
This was the first time I felt like, okay, this is the first time I started enjoying anything so far.
It really did feel like the first time that characterization was being moved forward in the series. Before, the first 2 issues were a lot of world building, and we spent so little time with just about every character outside of Marcus. They're all basically a bunch of stereotypes up until now.
Yes.
And from here it did move fairly well, but it was a lot of dialogue to get through. And I mean a lot. And that's coming from somebody who likes Brian Michael Bendis' writing.
Yeah, it was a lot of dialogue, but it's a lot of dialogue I can actually follow, keep track, and not want to fucking kill someone for their personal views.
Yeah, there was a lot of curious, viewpoints on sociality and the necessity of forming friendships and alliances.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't cause me to question anything, but it did make me think a little bit about what's gone on in my past and how people might have viewed it. But the revelation that Willie, leader of the Final World Order, leader of this group of gangsters, is unable to kill anyone. I wasn't expecting that. I mean,
definitely a subversion of expectations right there.
Yeah, I mean, I knew about the concept because it was in the first episode of the live action series, but the depths as to how unable he is to hurt anyone, because basically his reputation was forced upon him by his relatives. That's both interesting and sad. Goodness knows what'll happen when push comes to shove and he has to actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when when Marcus actually murdered another homeless guy who, I don't know, arguably deserved some punishment for what happened in his past, but at the same time, he's no longer that guy, you know?
I think Marcus did out of the guy actually forced him to remember something that was obviously pretty awful in his past.
Yeah, it does appear that Marcus suffered from some sexual abuse as a boy, and a few words, you know, keyed into those emotions, and he reacted.
Yep.
Um, at the same time, there's also a little bit of added pressure because if Marcus and Willie had not killed somebody and came back, then they would be murdered by the teachers at the school.
That was one of the possibilities.
Yeah, it was a bad catch-22. So those were the first three issues. The next couple are basically Marcus supposed to be punished, but instead other members of his class took him on a road trip to Vegas so that they could kill the father of one of his classmates for kicks. This whole thing it was one of the weirdest road trips I've ever seen, and I've read a ton of comic books in my time. The scene of Maria and Saya doing coke in the bathroom and just declaring each other their super best friends forever. What the frick, man?
Oh, that's some Joker levels.
Yeah, I was really worried that something was broken in there. Although the scenes of them at the Grateful Dead concert to score drugs to sell later. And then Marcus thought he got some bad drugs and he ended up taking down 8 tabs of acid at once. Oh dear. Moron. There was something kind of funny about him tripping out through the majority of the rest of this volume. If anything, because he definitely deserved it.
There's some fear and loathing shit going on here.
Oh yeah. It was beyond that, man. And it was rather impressive how it was visually told, because a lot of the scenes you did get the sense of how badly his brain is just freaking out at that moment.
It is fried right now.
The thing when they were just talking about getting to Circus and all the visions of everything that could potentially happen, he's staring at all this stuff in the sky, and then you realize they just pulled up to the place. And when they announced that they're going to Circus, it's been a long time since I've been there, but if there is a single place in Vegas that is awful to take someone who's fried out of their minds, it is Circus. The whole place is stylized and decorated as if, it's like Funhouse crazy. Oh, God.
Yeah. And give them a warped sense of reality, and yeah, let's have fun with that.
Yeah, and boy, did they go overboard on that.
Dude, just look at what he was doing in their
bedroom.
Yeah, bedroom. Sure.
Yeah, the visions of things crawling out of the painting frames and the lamp that had eyes and jagged teeth.
And the whole shining thing with the walls.
Yeah. Oh God, he was freaking. But he was so fried that he kind of missed it when his roommate went into the room next door and started to strangle his dad with his own belt. And it turns out that the other kid's dad was a POS, but again, Marcus went reactionary, grabbed something heavy, hit the guy in the side of the skull, and took him out. Marcus, I don't know if he's born to be a killer, but when push comes to shove, he definitely will.
Well, I imagine he's got some, fight or flight thing going on where it's like, yeah, fight first, hit him as hard as possible.
Yeah. But when Marcus is trying to calm down and the Mr. T slot machine starts talking to him in his messed up mind, that was actually kind of funny. Don't make Mr. T wait, Marcus! Sorry. And he pulls the lever. Oh, dude. I actually laughed at that. But the unfortunate confrontation at the end between Chico and Marcus over Chico's girlfriend, Maria, man, that was telegraphed since page 1, really.
Oh, yeah?
You knew that was coming. Although the resolution of it was brutal, man. The fight that went through a convenience store, multiple people died. And this whole thing spanned like an issue and a half. I don't know. You could kind of see that he wasn't going to make it, and you knew that one of the people in this road trip was going to kill him. Maria and a bladed fan. I wasn't quite. I didn't see that necessarily. But
she was. I kind of expected, considering she was, dancing as a dancing at that party, the
That was the
uh,
Day of the Dead parade.
yeah, the Day of the Dead parade. So she definitely had her style of dealing with people.
Yeah, but I don't think that anyone was looking to necessarily kill Chico in that moment, but he wasn't leaving anybody much of a choice.
No.
And she reached out and did it because it turns out Maria was pretty much gifted to Chico by other people, more or less. They gave him a girlfriend and someone that they could train because she's pretty, and people just wouldn't assume that she would be, the thief, the murderer, and things like that. So there's a lot of PTSD going on here. And then the freak with a messed up face shows up at the end with a shotgun. I'm surprised he really didn't want to terminate anybody. You think he'd just want to finish this, but instead he wants the others to train Marcus to be a master killer so that he can get a real fight. How very Super Saiyan of you. It just seemed like an odd twist, like right at that moment. Like, I want a real fight. You don't want to just do something for making that face look like that? You know what I mean? You would think he's already earned the right to just kind of get his little bit of vengeance, but he decided not to. So he carries away Chico's body because he says you never know when you need a dead Latino for some reason. Then he grabbed the cat and Mike's skin crawled. Poor cat. And this whole
Wait a
thing.
minute.
Sorry?
Actually, I was just curious. This weird guy with the half messed up, two-face face.
Mm-hmm.
Is he that one guy that we saw in the Marcus flashback in the second issue?
That's what I'm guessing, although it's never really alluded to. To my knowledge, he never said his name. So we've got a bunch of hints, but we don't have any definitive identities. And, Jesse and I can sit here and supposition all we want, but until it's actually said, you never know what entirely you're looking at.
Mm-hmm.
And that was kind of shocking because there was a couple pages of Marcus pretty much figuring out that he has something akin to a family happening here, even though it's a messed up life. And then the whole thing kind of stops rather abruptly at that point. This whole volume just it slowly revved up, then it hit 80, and then it just stopped, which is kind of bizarre. I don't know. I mean, we've gone through the whole thing. Do you want to give a quick summary?
Uh, this is definitely someone with weird personal beliefs of life and society, and has a very negative or cynical outlook on everything. This is a very, I will say it again, edgy book that
Mm-hmm.
honestly I probably would have never touched. Seriously.
Okay.
Eh, I, I think, well, given that the show on was it Netflix?
Sci-fi now.
Sci-fi definitely can kind of update update in their show compared to this is totally or is it still stuck in the 80s in that one too?
Yeah, it's a period piece.
Oh, okay, then never mind. Still, some of the uh,
It's okay.
I not a personal fan of this book, but I can see a ton of people who would enjoy the hell out of this thing.
All right.
If I were to rate this, 6.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I came in just thinking that the show was interesting, so the comic book should make for interesting reading. And unfortunately, what I found out is that Deadly Class shares something in common with Scott Pilgrim versus the World, in that to me, for some reason, the live action adaptation is much better than the source material. The comic book isn't badly written, but it's not very snappily written. It doesn't flow very well from issue to issue, and in some cases, story to story. The art, although I understand it, and it is technically an indie book through Image, it just never really felt like it was a fully fleshed out comic. And it just, I don't know, certain sections moved way too fast, other sections moved way too slow, and we didn't even really get a sense as to what the characters were really like until issue number 4, and that's a bit of a crime. So I'm actually with Jesse on this. I would give it a 6 in the end. It's decent reading, but I couldn't see really giving it to even niche fans of anything I know. I'd go other places first. So Yeah.
Has to definitely hand this thing off to someone who has really uh, drastic outlooks.
Yeah, but you'd have to be careful though, because
Yeah.
this deals with certain subjects like suicide very starkly, without any sort of counterbalance. It's just kind of the mire that some people can find themselves in.
Yep.
So yeah, I would have to think seriously before I referred somebody to this one in particular. Do you have any preferences as to next week? Because if not, I'm just going to throw something out there and say that's what we're doing.
Throw away. Hit that dartboard.
Okay. We've had a couple indie books in a row, so we really need to delve back into the big two for a little while. And I can't say what the others would want. I'm really curious to get your opinion on the Immortal Hulk.
Oh.
You know,
Oh, I heard so many things about this one.
yeah, this is
This
the
might be as edgy as it might be as edgy as this one.
oh my god, I think it may be more so. But this is the current version of the Hulk where Bruce Banner and the Hulk are two. They're still sharing the same body, but they're definitely separate entities right now. And this Hulk is. He's scary. That's the best way I can
Gosh,
describe it without giving away like half the volume. He's scary.
you mean an actual Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde?
Yeah, except beyond that, because in this case, Hyde is not raging. Hyde is looking for his own stuff right now.
Well, Hyde was a well-spoken and intelligent individual.
Yeah, but Hyde dealt with his rage. This Hulk doesn't really deal with rage. He hides it. It's weird as hell. So next week we'll do Volume 1 of The Immortal Hulk. It's issues 1 through 5. Thank you very much for tuning in. I invite you to come back next week. And so far I'm enjoying this year. How about you?
I'll let you know later.
I mean, it could use more government, but you know. All right, man. Everybody take it easy. Thanks again. I am Jeremy.
I'm Jesse.
Have a good one, everybody.